Welcome back to our video series Energy Management, Energy Trading, Portfolio Management and Risk Management. Today we will finish the chapter on portfolio management. We will now look at subchapter 2.4, Integrated Portfolio Management. So what we will do here, you see on this slide, we will bring together what we said so far. By now we can complete the whole picture. We have discussed generation, portfolio management and wholesale markets. We have also discussed wholesale markets alone, and we have discussed retail market, portfolio management and wholesale market. But of course, large integrated utilities have both generation assets they control and own, and retail customers they deliver electricity to, and of course they are also active on the wholesale market. So this is what you see here in this blue box. This is an integrated portfolio. It does have generation, it does have retail customers indicated by having the dashed line within the retail market box, and it is active on the wholesale market, again indicated by the dashed line cutting through the wholesale market. So here the portfolio management is the center connecting retail clients, wholesale markets and generation assets. And essentially what needs to be done here is just to do all of what we said before in one integrated portfolio. This refers to, again, integrated energy companies such as large municipalities, Tier 1 energy companies such as in Germany, for example, RWE, and also very large industrial consumers. Some chemical companies often have their own generation assets and they are also consuming electricity, so they're part of the retail market, if you want to put it that way, and they're also active on the wholesale market. Then again, as I said, Deutsche Bahn is another example, but there is other large industrial consumers who even operate and own their own power plants. And of course, these are also active on the wholesale market. So that's what we now have to briefly discuss. There is changed requirements for portfolio management. Historically, municipality and also large industrial consumers signed an all-inclusive supply contract with a large integrated supplier once a year. This was in the past, and this is still true for very small companies. If you, for example, are a very small industrial consumer, then you still sign this all-inclusive supply contract once a year because it's not your core business to optimize your energy profile. But for the very large companies I just mentioned, this is the history, this is not done anymore. What is done today is an optimization of the risk-return expectation, lowering procurement costs through trading activities. So being active on all these different markets, and we already highlighted the complexity just in the last video, just exemplary, just for the generation asset, marketing this optimally, operating this, maximizing revenues already necessitates very complex optimization software solutions. And then if you also have the procurement side, delivering to final customers, delivering to retail clients, there we also discussed a significant amount of complexity. You remember these procurement strategies we discussed in earlier videos. So there is complexity on all sides of the markets. And then if you want to go into energy trading, as some of these large companies are doing on top of all this, then it really becomes complicated. But this is today's modern portfolio management. This is what's most fun, probably, if you have all these different flexibility sources and then you can optimize and maximize your revenues. That's a very interesting position to be in. But dealing with the associated risks requires a high degree of professionalism. You need significant market knowledge, and it also implies greater administrative effort. There is, and rightly so, regulation in place on energy trading, because that's a high-risk business which may even impact the society, the financial system. If, just imagine, investment banks trading energy are going bankrupt, that may cause ruptures for the whole system. So this is a regulated business. You have to fulfill reporting requirements, you have to fulfill capital requirements, you need licenses to be active here. Okay, but still, this is modern business. The alternatives for this modern business are you can develop your own capacities and do it yourself, which is kind of a make decision again. Or you can outsource this or cooperate with other companies on this, which is more like a buy decision. So you still get the complex portfolio management and not your once a year all-inclusive contract. You still get the chance to profit from variations in prices, but you're not doing it yourselves. This slide here shows the different options from the all-inclusive contract on the lower left, which has low effort, but of course then also low market opportunities and low trading activities. From there you can increase complexity, effort, market opportunities, trading activities, step by step, to on the very right in the back, your own trading department. That's a full-fledged solution, but there is ways in between. You can just have portfolio management without taking too much risk, and you can have delivery of load schedules and remaining load profiles. So instead of having the all-inclusive once a year contract, for example, participate from variations, fluctuations in the forward prices and decide, for example, to buy every quarter some part of energy. That's the delivery of load schedules. And again, from blue to red here, trading activity increases from low to high, market opportunities increase from low to high, and effort increases from low to high. So this is just a few words on the integrated portfolio. This is how an integrated portfolio management can be organized. In the details, of course, again, you have to optimize your power plant. You have to optimize your procurement for your retail customer base, households, industrial consumers, and so on and so on and so on. And you can even take some active trading positions. But that is essentially all we already pre-discussed in earlier videos. One question, however, is still open. How do you measure, how do you benchmark, how do you steer all this? And that's what we do in the first subchapter here, performance measurement. I will use simple examples to bring the point across so that the viewer actually understands what it's about, and then we will briefly sum up what this implies. So let's start with the open position for an integrated company. We already defined the open position for a pure procurement company which buys on the wholesale market and sells to retail customers. But here in the complex, large integrated portfolio, it's more complicated. Here, the open position for an integrated company comprises purchases, buy, in this formula, generation, gen, sales, sell, and consumption, con, for a delivery period, t, which can, for example, be 1 hour of a year in the future. So here we define the open position, OPT, equal to buy for t plus generation expected in t, which depends on the variable production costs and the power price, the wholesale electricity price PT, minus sell, what is sold for RT, minus con in RT, which may or may not be price reactive. So this can depend on the wholesale electricity price if you have some flexibility on your consumption profile. So this is the open position, how it's defined for an integrated company, and you already see that there is a certain complexity behind this. So most actors in the energy system have an open position which is simpler than this, but they still have an open position. Mostly larger utilities and large industry companies have positive values in all 4 components of this open position formula. The open position for period T, which is the delivery period, can change over time the trading period. This can happen through transactions as well as changing expectations. For example, if you define T here as any particular hour of the next year, then if you buy a full front year base contract that enters this formula, because our T is affected by that, think a moment about where it's affected. Of course, if we buy a forward, it's affecting the purchases, the buy T is increasing. So that's one example how the open position changes. Remember, however, when registering the schedule on the day before delivery at 2:30 p.m., each balancing group must be balanced. The expected open position for the balancing group must thus be 0 at that point. So what you have bought, you typically know for sure, even though there is some delivery credit risk. We will move on to credit risk in a later part of this lecture. You typically know how much you bought, but you now have to decide how much you generate and hope your plant won't break down. And then you know what you sell, and you have to estimate what you will most likely consume. So, and to your best of your abilities, you must estimate this, and it needs to be 0 on the day before delivery. We discussed, it's just a repetition for this balancing group responsibility here. So that's the open position for an integrated company. And this essentially is what you optimize to make maximum revenues over the trading period. Okay, I said we need to measure performance. Allocation of profits requires differentiation between procurement and sales success as one example. Why are we interested in that? Because we want to identify the strengths and the weaknesses in the company. So who is actually doing a good job? If you have this integrated portfolio, it's hard to see where is the money actually coming from. Even if there is a positive bottom line, you have to assess, was it our generation asset, was our power plant in the money? Or was our portfolio management team so great? Or was it our retail customers where we can charge large revenues? So, or was it our trading business? What was profitable and what was not? And as these things in an integrated portfolio are, well, integrated, you have to define where is the money coming from, and this is not such a simple question. It's also important for a second reason. Typically in these very competitive environments, the actors, for example the traders, or even the sales teams and portfolio managers, are incentivized with bonuses. So if you're doing a good job, you get more money, your wage increases, you get a bonus. But in order to determine what a good job entails, typically in such an environment, this is measured in euros. The company bottom line often plays a role for this, but the person, the individual's profit contribution also matters. How good was I representing the sales team when I engaged with my customers, with my retail customers? Did I do a good job providing or selling to an industrial client? Did I convince him? Did I be able to charge a good amount of money for the deal? Was the deal I made good or bad? So it's not only about numbering deals. Here it also depends, because the price and the costs are a moving target, how much above the price you were able to close the deal. Okay, so this is the second reason why it's important to truly be able to tell which department or even which person did well and who did not. One example we can use here to simplify this, to boil it down to the essentials. Assume the sales department sold a base product to a retail customer at 55 euros per megawatt hour. Assume the procurement department purchased the corresponding position for 50 euros per megawatt hour. So easy, straightforward to see. The profit contribution is 5 euros per megawatt hour. But the complex question, whose success was it? Is the sales manager getting a bonus, or is the portfolio manager typically handling the purchase, doing a good job and should thus get a bonus? This is something where companies typically start to discuss a little bit, and you should. I mentioned this, it's very important. Try to avoid the internal friction. So while performance measurement is really important, you have to keep an environment where colleagues trust each other as much as possible, where colleagues are willing to cooperate as much as possible. You do not want your internal departments acting like this, in a confrontational, protective manner, just protecting their own resources and their own success, because then the overall goal always is to have a profitable company. So this is important. I'm coming back to this. But here again, we have 5 euros as a profit contribution. Who is responsible? It is at the same time important to determine this. As I said, for example, to see where your company has homework to do. Is it more in the sales department, or is it more in the procurement portfolio management? So, how do you determine the success? What would you do? Think about it for a moment. The answer is marking to market, or M to M. Also called mark to market, doesn't matter. Point is, you compare the position to the market value. So assume the settlement price is 52 euros per megawatt hour at the time of the retail sale. It's less relevant when the portfolio management is actually buying the energy. It's about the time your sales team, your marketing division, sells the electricity to the retail customer. At that moment in time, you can observe the wholesale market price. And that is highly relevant. Why? Because the alternative of selling to the retail client would be to sell on the wholesale market. And if here in this example, you could have sold the electricity for 52 euros per megawatt hour on the wholesale market, then obviously selling it for 55 to the retail customer is better. And you can quantify the difference. So here, leaving out a few other relevant things, of course, and simplifying a little bit, the difference simply is 3 hours. So, slightly simplifying, as I said, your marketing team, your sales manager was able to sell something for 55, which had at the time a market value of 52, and thus he did a good job selling 3 years above market price. And that's how you measure the contribution of the sales team. And of course, at the same time, the procurement department, as I said, it's typically the portfolio management, earned 2 additional euros by buying something which was sold for 52 at 50 euros. Of course, not back to back. You remember these procurement discussions, because if they would have bought it back to back, they would have bought it on the wholesale market typically, where prices are pretty transparent nowadays, so the value and the costs would have been 52. Achieving 50 is a great success by either buying before in advance when prices were low, or waiting even after the retail team sold to the retail customer at 52. The portfolio management did not necessarily have to buy, if they have the flexibility to decide this, for 52 at the same time. They could have waited if the price would become lower afterwards for this forward future contract for example, next year delivery. Then they could buy for 50 and earn these additional 2 years. So the point is, marking to market allows us to strictly divide responsibilities, divide euros, and come up with individual performance measurements. And this helps to identify strengths and weaknesses in the company. But it should not be overdone. This is possible, that's the last point on this slide, during any point in time. You can always backtrack any portfolio and any open position. And you can even do that hypothetically on a daily basis. Even if the portfolio management has not yet bought the contract, you observe a market price for that particular day, which concerns the forward price for the product in question. And you could use that to benchmark, because that's the market's best expectation at this particular moment in time. Okay, a second example. The sales department sells a base product to a retail customer for 55 euros per megawatt hour, and you produce it yourself within your company with a generation asset which has variable production costs of 23 euros per megawatt hour. This time the profit contribution is even more impressive. It's a stunning 32 euros per megawatt hour. Again, is it a sales or a generation success? Same idea as before, mark to market. If the price at the time of the sale is 52, then the profit contribution for the sales department here is again 3 euros, while the generation has a value of 29. So again, you can use this to benchmark performance. However, again, you should not overdo this. I have one example from a large integrated company where it was more rewarding for the portfolio managers to discuss about procurement transfer prices internally with the power plant division than working hard on the market to market it optimally. And during some periods, the traders were able to make absurd bonuses just based on the fact that they got essentially cheap electricity from their internal counterparties in generation. they did not properly mark to market, but this marking to market in the details is more complex than I explained here. So coming back to that, it's just the didactic first step. You get the idea, you benchmark against outside options, that's obviously true and relevant, but what these outside options are and who should bear the costs for several components, for labor, for trading systems, and so on, increases complexity significantly. Nonetheless, a very valuable exercise helping the company. Okay, and with that we close this video. Thanks for watching.